Hello everyone. Today we are starting our last unit of the quarter, and you'll probably be glad to hear this. This is our easiest unit of the quarter. So we're going to dive right in. So this unit is called Counting Atoms in a Chemical Formula. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of our notes. I do have this page available to you on your Schoology folder for today, so be sure to check those out if you need to view it a second time. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at a few vocabulary terms and just walk through what exactly counting atoms in a chemical formula will look like. So I'm going to start with number one. It says an element symbol written on its own represents one atom of that element. For example, when you see the symbol for helium, He, that is telling us that there is one atom of helium. Moving down to section 2. So it says an element symbol written in a chemical formula indicates that at least one atom of that element is present in the molecule. So we just finished up our unit on bonding, and we learned that you can take two atoms, or you can take two different elements and they can bond together to make a new compound. So this would be called a molecule. They use carbon and oxygen and covalently bonded those two nonmetals together to make the compound carbon monoxide. In this one molecule, there is one atom of carbon and one atom of oxygen for a total of two atoms in this entire molecule. Moving down, we have a vocabulary term called subscript. Now, we heard this term in our last unit, and we learned a little bit about what it means. So if you see this H2, and the 2 is down in the lower right-hand corner, it's called a subscript, written in the lower right. So that prefix sub means below. So this number is telling me how many hydrogen atoms that I have here in this molecule. So I have two hydrogen atoms in that molecule. Moving across, we have a molecule H2O2. So we have two different subscripts here. So that's telling me that I have two hydrogen atoms and two oxygen atoms in this molecule H2O2. Now, like up here, if you don't see a subscript, the one is understood. Okay, we don't have to write the ones in. So in here I have one carbon atom, one oxygen atom. The one is understood. I'm going to keep moving down to another vocabulary word called a coefficient. So a coefficient is a number that's written in front of the entire chemical formula. So right here I have a 3. That's my coefficient. 3H2O. That's telling me that I have 3 molecules of H2O. Okay? In each one molecule there are 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So the way that we work that out down here, for hydrogen in H2O, there's 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. If I have 3 of these molecules, then I would have a total of 6 hydrogen atoms, a total of 3 oxygen atoms. So essentially what that 3 is saying is that I have 1, 2, 3 water molecules. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hydrogens and 1, 2, 3 oxygens for a total of 9 atoms in that molecule. Same thing over here. My coefficient is 8. My molecule is NH3. So in NH3, just that one molecule, there's 1 atom of nitrogen, and that subscript 3 tells me there are 3 atoms of hydrogen. Then this 8 gets distributed to everything that comes behind it because I have 8 of those molecules. So then I multiply those by 8. So there are 8 total nitrogen atoms and 24 total hydrogen atoms in 8NH3. And then we would add those together for a total of 32 atoms in that entire 8NH3. All right, so those are your notes, and you do have these available to you, so make sure you take a look at your notes. Now let's do some practice. So this is going to be what your practice problems look like today. I'm going to do the highlighted ones for you as examples so that you have those to go through for the rest of your page day. You have 8 problems on this page, and then you have another 9, I believe, in addition to these. So we'll get a lot of practice in. I also like to have a calculator handy just so that I don't have to spend a ton of time trying to do all of that addition and multiplication in my head. So let's go ahead and get started. So our first molecule here, we have C9, H8, and O4. So we don't have any coefficients, but we do have subscripts here. So the first thing I'm going to do is write out the names of my elements. I have carbon, I have hydrogen, and I have oxygen. So you'll also need to have a periodic table on hand just in case you don't remember the names of those symbols that you have in your chemical formulas. The first thing I'm going to do is look at my subscripts. So carbon has a subscript of 9, hydrogen has a subscript of 8, oxygen has a subscript of 4. Okay, I don't have a coefficient, so I'm done. Then at that point, I would just have to add everything together. So I should have, I'm going to use my calculator because, hey, guess what? It's here, and I'm not that great at math. So I have a total of 21 atoms in this molecule. Okay, I'm going to move down to number 2. I've got H2SO4. First thing I'm going to do is write out the names of each one of my elements. So I have hydrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. The next thing I'm going to do is look at my subscripts. My subscript for hydrogen is 2, telling me that I have 2 hydrogen atoms. Sulfur, the 1 is understood, so I have 1 atom of sulfur. And then my subscript for oxygen is 4. I do not have a coefficient, or actually the coefficient is an understood 1. So then at that point, I can add my atoms together to get total atoms in the molecule. So that would be 2, 3, and then a total of 7 atoms in that molecule. All right. Moving down to number 3. So number 3, I have a coefficient included in here. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of additional math. First thing I'm going to do is write out the names of my elements. I have carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, sodium, and oxygen. My second step is to look at the subscripts for each one of my elements. My subscript for carbon is 5. That means I have 5 atoms of carbon in this molecule. Hydrogen, I have 8. Nitrogen, the 1 is understood. Sodium, the 1 is understood. Oxygen, I have 4. I'm not finished yet because I do have a coefficient. All right, so the coefficient is going to get multiplied and distributed out to everything that comes behind it. So I like to draw arrows. So my 3 gets distributed to my 5, to my 8, to my 1 for nitrogen, my 1 for sodium, and my 4 for oxygen. So at that point, I would come down here and do my multiplication. So everything will get multiplied by 3. I hope I do my math correctly. So far, so good. Okay. At that point, I would then add all of my atoms together. And I am going to use my calculator for that. So I have 15 plus 24 plus 3 plus 3 plus 12 for a total of 57 atoms in 3C5H8NNaO4. Okay. Moving on to number 6. So number 6 is different from the ones we've done so far. Number 6 has parentheses in and also has a coefficient. So again, my first step is to write out the names of my elements. My first element here is aluminum. Next element is chromium. And my last element is oxygen. My next step is to write my subscripts. So my subscript for aluminum is 2, chromium is 2, oxygen is 7. Okay, we're not going to pay attention to this outside of parentheses yet. We just write down the subscripts that follow right behind each one of our elements. After we do that, then we can look for parentheses. Okay, so we have parentheses and there is a 3 outside of our parentheses. The 3 will get distributed to everything that is inside only. This 3 does not apply to aluminum because aluminum is not inside of the parentheses. So then I'm going to come down and multiply my chromium and my oxygen by that subscript of 3. Okay, still not done because I do have a coefficient. The coefficient gets applied to everything that comes behind it. So again, I like to draw my arrows. So the 5 will get distributed to my aluminum, to my chromium, and to my oxygen. So then I would come down here, multiply my 2 by 5 to get a total of 10. Right now I have 6 chromium. I'm just going to keep on multiplying. Times 5 to get a total of 30. Same thing with oxygen. I had, I don't know why I put 6 there. I'm so sorry. That should have been a 21. And I'm going to keep on multiplying. Times 5. 21 times 5. That gives me a total of 105. And then I would add them all together as my last step. And I would get a total of 145 atoms in this entire molecule, or 5 of these molecules. All right, I'm going to do one more with y'all just for good measure. So I'm going to look down at number 8. So number 8, we have subscripts, we have parentheses, we have coefficients. We've got it all. Our first step is to write out the names of our elements. I have nitrogen, I have hydrogen, I have sulfur, and oxygen. My next step is to write down my subscripts for each element. Nitrogen has a 1, that's understood. Hydrogen has a 4. This 2 does not apply to any individual element. It applies to what's in parentheses, so I skip over that for now. Sulfur has an understood 1. Oxygen is 4. My next step is to go to parentheses. So we do subscripts, then parentheses. So this 2 outside of the parentheses applies to everything that's inside. So it's going to apply to my nitrogen and to my hydrogen. So I multiply by 2. Multiply by 2 for hydrogen. Okay. After I do my parentheses, then I do my coefficient. The coefficient applies to everything that comes behind it. So it applies to my nitrogen, my hydrogen, my sulfur, and my oxygen. So everything will get multiplied by 4. So my total number for nitrogen would be 8. Total number for hydrogen would be 32. Total number for sulfur is 4. And for oxygen would be 16. My last step is to add those together. 8 plus 32 plus 4 plus 16. And I have a total of 60 total atoms in this molecule. All right, that is counting atoms. And that is exactly what will be on our test, last test of the quarter. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me directly, and I will do whatever I can to help you. Good luck.